Hello, my name is John Nichols. I'm a solution architect at AWS. I'm also known as Rocket. And one of the things I bring to the table is how to whiteboard. I'm going to talk a little bit about technique, I'm going to talk a little bit about tools, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the art of whiteboarding. So let's talk about technique. I'm going to give you what I call a kata. Kata is in martial arts a routine that you practice on a regular basis to get better. And there's different katas for different things. In this case, I'm going to give you probably the most general kata. I call it the three-ish kata. And it's essentially you do threes of different things. Now, from a technique perspective, doing all the right things, standing in front of the whiteboard, one of the big things I talk about on a regular basis, how you lock your wrist. And you lock your wrist so that your drawing is solid, it's big. I'll give you just a simple example. If you don't lock your wrist, it's easy to do that. When you lock your wrist, it's easy to do that. So that's just one little technique thing. Eraser here. Another technique, so alphabets. So we're going to do the three-ish. So this is kata number 1. This is just my fun name for it. And what we're going to do is we're going to do ABCs. We're going to do squares. Do circles. We're going to do triangles. And then we're going to do a series of lines and arrows and squigglies. And we'll probably do 3 sets of each just to try things out. Okay, for ABCs, for this one, the same size is fine. Okay, same size. And so it's pretty straightforward. You're looking for speed and legibility. And what I tend to do is uppercase. Uppercase block letters tends to be the most legible, especially if you want to put this into like a document or a presentation, and it makes it very straightforward. I get a question sometimes, it's like, well, what program did you use to do that? I'm lucky enough to have decent handwriting. I thank my father for that. So you could do this 3 times, and if you want to keep it at the same size, there's variations. You could get a little slower. Now, one thing to note is, one thing you want to watch for is the fade off, okay? And that is definitely a tendency, especially if you've got a decent sized whiteboard, you're going to tend to want to do that. So one thing you can do is you can step over. Now I'm not, because I'm stepping in front of the camera, but if you want to, that's fine. But I'm not, I'm going to, all right. And I know it's not so much fun watching somebody else whiteboard, but there it is. Okay. Part of what you're going to be doing while whiteboarding is listening to the audience and translating what they're saying into what you're hearing in a visual way. So you could do interesting things to help with that. You could take a conversation that you've heard between 2 people at a meeting, and you could play it back either in your head or have it recorded and then whiteboard it out. So there's some pretty cool things you can do to practice that. All right, so this is the same size ABCs. Now we're going to do squares. And this is the format that I tend to go in. So square, you go 3 by 3. Now you're going to notice something here is I'm trying to start from different places on the edge of the square. And this has to do with, you know, if you're drawing something and you finish it and you want to put a circle around it or a square around it or something, you want to be efficient in your movements, mostly because you're trying to convey something very quickly. So being able to start a square relatively consistently from any of the points on the square tends to be a good thing. And then you can also go counterclockwise. And in this case, what I'm doing is I'm looking for the third, you know, the second layer and then the third layer like this, the 3 by 3 by 3. Look for consistency. Look for when you're varying the stroke, and watch how you do that. Oops, I missed one there. Okay, so that's done that one. Doing this one. Same thing with the circles. Now circles are interesting because you've got two ways to do a circle. You can do the full here, right? And you can start from different spots. That's very important with circles because you're definitely going to be starting from different spots there. And then you can, you know, the direction is also, you want to be able to go both directions. Now, I'm varying this up front just to show you what to do. What I recommend you do when you start with this is be consistent at first. So do a whole set, one direction, one starting point. And why would I tell you to do that? Well, part of it is to get consistent and confident. So whiteboarding skills can be a matter of confidence. I've seen a number of people get up and go, you won't be able to understand my whiteboarding. And they end up with a decent whiteboarding, but they led with, it's not going to be a good whiteboard, so we all had that expectation. That's not a time to undersell. I wouldn't even say anything about your whiteboarding skills. And I tend to have people not want to get on the whiteboard after watching me because I got some decent skills here. But what I try and tell people is, look, it's as good as, don't worry about it. You know, I don't feel bad if you walked up and started messing with my whiteboard, unless I told you not to. That's a different story. But in this case, what I'm looking for is input. Okay, so that's your circles. So remember, and the other option. So one option is the full one motion circle, and then there's another one which is, I call it the calligraphy version, which is where you have two strokes, and that's, you know, in calligraphy. One of the rules in calligraphy is you try and always, the pen tries to always go down, and because of the way it grabs the paper. So in this case, an O would be two strokes down like that. So it's an option. If you feel like you can't make a round circle, try that two sides. That often helps. Don't be afraid of erasing the whiteboard with your hand. I used to say, you know, I think it was Ricky Henderson, who was a big baseball player in Oakland. I got to see him several times, and he broke this big base stealing record. He always said his mom told him that if he came home and his uniform wasn't dirty, he didn't play hard enough. And so I always say that if I come home after a day of architecting and my hand isn't full of whiteboard stuff, then I haven't done it right. Last one is triangles. And again, like circles, you have two options with triangles. You have the single motion triangle, and then you have the division. I call it the division. So you go down, down, across. Okay, so up to you on where you want to do this one. And there's another triangle exercise that I'll show you in a second. Yeah, I'll definitely show it to you. Okay, and I'll just, a quick aside, this isn't really part of the 3-ish kata, but there's this really cool exercise to do with triangles, which is to, make more triangles, as many as you want, and just keep doing that. And you can keep building this out. And it's a fun little exercise. It's kind of a Zen thing. So that's the 3. So we've done triangles. Now we're going to do angles. And angles, think of an angle as a square, but also think that you're going to be connecting things. This will happen a lot, especially as SAs or anyone doing technical drawings on a board. You're going to have 2 things that you're going to want to connect, right? So that motion right there happens a lot. And practicing that motion is good. And I have a second kata, or a third, actually it's kata number 3, which does big motions, big graphics. And that's where you do like this. And that becomes a technique thing, because you're definitely wanting to lock your wrist. And in some cases, you may have to step across. And so you want to feel good about doing that. You'll notice that you see some wavy-ish lines here, and that's fine. Wavy lines aren't bad. If it's out of proportion, you can simply do that and then, redraw. Do it until you feel like you're good with the drawing. Right. That's good for if you're wanting to publish something. So if you've done a whiteboard and you actually want to insert it into a document, you may want to spend a few minutes cleaning up, and that's good. So you've got angles, and you can do all the different size angles here. You can do, let's see, there, that direction, go up. So you've got the 4 corners. If you wanted to have fun and do this, that's fine too. You can have as much fun as you want on the angles. Arrows, especially, with these right here. And you can just take the lines you've drawn and put them on there, or you can look for that motion that feels good on putting there. A nice arrow is a beautiful thing. And you can there's two or three kinds of arrows you can draw. So you can draw the triangle arrow like that, right? It's kind of fun. I tend to draw the line first, then the arrow if I'm going to do that, unless I'm wanting to convey something very specific, like that. Not a good one. So let's redo that one. There. So that's arrows, and you could do 3x3s of those, just similar to this if you want. And the last thing to show is wavies. I call them wavies, but they're just wavy lines. And you're going to do that motion sometimes. It's not going to happen a ton. You probably do that motion more than the full-on wavy motion. Okay, and you definitely want to do both ways on this, because feeling confident in going both directions, very okay, and you can see how that goes there. Oop. Okay, so right, I'm not even going to try it because I'd have to stop the video and think about what I was doing there. Actually, let's try it. So we're going to go up like that. Okay, there we go. Right. So that's wavies. Kata number 1, 3-ish. Okay. So to recap, work on locking your wrist. Okay. Work on holding your pen so you know, in a good, not straight to the board. I don't recommend this. Okay. Partly because it's going to mess with your tip. So I recommend coming at it at an angle. And then practice this on a fairly regular basis, and it'll serve you well. I have a Whiteboard Kata series of videos that I'm working on, and I'll make sure I share that with you after this meeting. So my name is John Nichols, also known as Rocket. Thank you very much for your time.